and I started recording this meeting. Folks, welcome. We're going to go ahead and start in a couple minutes. I'm going to go ahead and share the screen with some Zoom reminders. Please remember to mute yourself.
We can hear someone crunching away at some delicious something.
Is that what I'm hearing, Chips?
It wasn't me, but it might be me before the end of the meeting.
It's a little pre-dinner snack.
We can see Heather dancing. I hope everyone's doing all right and surviving the fact that it's slowly getting hot everywhere. So.
Jamie, do you know who's on?
We do, and we are going to do a little roll call, so everyone will hear who's on here in just a minute. It looks like we've got about 26 people on, and of course, a bunch of those are district and CARB staff. But we'll do a little roll call here in a minute, I believe.
Yeah, the reason I asked is because I had notified everyone that I had another meeting at this time, but it didn't get scheduled. It's canceled.
Well, we're glad you're here.
Well, thank you. We'll see how it works.
I see more people are joining. We're gonna go ahead and start in about 2 minutes. Please don't forget to mute yourself. Okay, well, it's 3 o'clock. We're gonna go ahead and start. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Tonight, it's not the evening yet. We're still in the middle of the day. Unusual. My name is Hannah Stelmakovich. I am with the Institute for Local Government, and I am your facilitator. Helping today is my colleague, Kim Denko. Kim,
Hi, everyone.
Kim will be helping with the chat box and managing questions and answers. If you have any question regarding Zoom technical troubleshooting, please send a text to Kim. I know a lot of going on in California, in the community, in the world right now. So thank you so much for taking your time today, shifting your focus away from these issues to what matters right now in Chapter community, improving the air quality. Let me just make sure our Spanish-speaking participants are all set and can hear us and can participate before we continue with this meeting. So to join the Spanish interpretation, look on the bottom of your screen. You're gonna see a little globe sign that says interpretation.
I don't need to be on this.
Please go ahead and click on this interpretation sign and select Spanish language. And your second step is going to be muting original audio. Also, if you have troubles joining Spanish channel on your computer, there is alternative number to call in so you can hear Spanish interpretation on your phone. And the number is on your screen. I'm just gonna quickly check with maybe Anna, do you mind sharing these instructions in Spanish? And we're just gonna take a pause to make sure all our Spanish speaking participants are set. Okay, I hear.
Hola, Lilia. You're cutting off a lot. It's weird.
Who, me? Hannah? Hannah is cutting off?
On Zoom. But right now you sound fine.
Okay, well.
It's so weird.
Apologies for the technical difficulties. I am not sure what's going on, but I'm gonna go ahead and switch to my phone audio.
Maybe no, Hannah, you're okay. Ellos también están hablando que, but I have them muted. It's weird.
Hannah, I can hear you just fine. Does everyone else hear Hannah?
I can hear Hannah.
I can hear her too. I think it might just be like other folks. I don't think you can mute other folks. I think they have to mute themselves.
Yes, so folks, for those of you who are joining us, please mute ourselves. Let's see. We just want to make sure right now that Spanish-speaking participants are all set and they are connected to audio channels via their computer or the phone. Okay. I hear none. I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing my screen. Okay, great. So very briefly, before we kick off with the welcome and our agenda item, we did a meeting last week where we learned how to use Zoom, and just a brief reminder about Zoom etiquette. Please rename yourself with your first and last name and organization as appropriate. Kim Denko, who is helping me today, will be contacting you via personal chat box and asking you to rename yourself if you haven't done that yet. Please stay on mute unless you are speaking or planning to speak. You can either unmute yourself or we will help you to do that. Sometimes it's confusing. Please raise your blue hand if you have any questions. And to get to the blue hand, on the bottom of your screen, you're gonna see the sign participants. Click on that sign participants little icon and the panel on the right is gonna pop up. And you will see in the right-hand side panel, the little blue hand on the bottom. And that's how you raise your hand. And Kim is monitoring who is raising the hands and we will go in order. Please use the chat box to communicate. If you have any questions. Please remember that everything you say in the chat box is also recorded. It's going to be transcribed automatically, even if you're using private chat box and just sending message privately. It's still transcribed and recorded. We're also streaming live on the Facebook, and this meeting is recorded as well. Just a brief reminder, we continue to follow the state and COVID-19 guidelines. Again, thank you for your patience as we continue to learn how to use these virtual platforms. Some of us are already better, some of us are, I don't know how to do that. So we're all in this together. And again, if you have any technical difficulties, please send a message via chat box to Kim Denka, who is helping me today. We're gonna do a roll call to make sure that we have committee members here. I'm gonna share my screen one more time, and in alphabetical order, we're gonna go down the list. And when I say your name, what I would like you to do, I would like you to give me a thumb up to show that you're here. And I'm demonstrating how to do this right now. So to get to this thumb up, you're gonna go to the bottom of your screen and you're gonna see a little reactions. You click on that reactions and click on thumb up. Okay, with that, we're gonna take a roll call. Let me share my screen. Okay, can you see it well? Okay, Gustavo. Esperanza. And if you are on the phone, you cannot use thumb up. So go ahead and unmute yourself and just say you're here. Esperanza. Wayne.
Here.
Thank you, Wayne. Michael. Tom.
Yes.
Thank you, Tom. Welcome. Hello. Gabriella. John. Okay, I may mispronounce the next name. Apologies in advance. Is it Sakura? Dora. Oscar. Maria. Jamie. Oh, never mind. Okay, after Maria, we have Philip. Angelica. Antonio. Maria Marquez.
No parece.
Christopher Marquez. Abigail. Linda. Michelle. Saul. Angie. David. Kathy.
I'm here, but I don't have a screen. I can only hear you.
Okay, thank you, Kathy, so much. Kim is gonna go ahead and rename you. Bianca. Philippa. Brad. Herman. Ron. And last but not least, Ed. Okay, great. Excellent. With that, I also would like to welcome a CARB staff and members of the public. And with that, I'm gonna pass to Ryan.
I had to find my pointer, excuse me. Well,
Meeting number 2, correct? Number 1?
2-0.
Number 1 officially. Just want to thank everybody and share my appreciation for everybody's willingness to use this medium to continue the important work of the AB 617 mandates. And you know, we really value the experience and the feedback and the input in looking to and now implement all these great measures that everybody works so hard on putting together. You know, I think kind of with these times, I mean, it's even more important for us to be able to get together and work collaboratively and on solutions that are going to impact the community of Shafter in a positive manner, and look forward as an agency. And I know everybody else on the Air District team works so hard to make this a positive experience and get positive results. And I know the same is true for the community steering committee members and all the other partner agencies that we have, DPR and California Air Resources Board. And so just really want to thank everybody for doing their part to once again make this a great process.
Great, thank you, Ryan. Okay, we're gonna dive into our agenda, and what we're gonna talk about next is an update about implementation of the pesticides measures in Shafter. We have Pam from the California Department of Pesticides Regulations. He is with Pesticides Program, and he have a very nice presentation for you. And we will follow up with the questions and answers after the presentations. So folks, if you have any questions, let's wait until the end. Raise your blue hand, and Kim Denka will manage and pay attention to participants who have questions. Our Spanish-speaking participants, the presentation will be displayed in English. I believe you were mailed the hard copies of the Spanish presentation that you can follow as Min presents. If you don't have a hard copy of the Spanish-speaking presentation, it's online, and I'm sure with Zoom meeting number 2, but committee meeting number 20, you know where to find these presentations online. Okay, with that, I'm gonna turn to Min. Please go ahead and share your screen, and we're gonna start this presentation.
You want me to share the presentation from my screen?
Yes, is that okay?
Oh no, I thought that you guys were gonna share it, so that's my fault. Let me pull it up real quick.
That's fine. I can pull it. Do you want me to pull it?
Yeah, if you can, and just give me the host, and I can click through this presentation. That's what we've done in the past. So I apologize. I wasn't sure how we were doing.
As Ryan mentioned, this is meeting number 1.
Let's get all the kinks out. Let's get all this out right now.
Okay, well, I have this presentation opened in a separate My tab just in case. So I'm gonna just share my tab. And Min, just go ahead and tell me when to click to the next slide.
Sounds good. Yeah, I can do that as well. So as we're getting that set up, just an introduction to myself again. My name is Min Pham. I'm the Air Program Manager. I've been in Shafter a couple of times. It's my program and my staff that are out there currently monitoring, doing the ambient air studies at Sequoia Elementary. So it's actually really good to see everybody again. It's, you know, hopefully everybody's doing well and safe. So moving forward, we were asked to provide an update on our current work. So with that, giving you an update on our mitigation process of 1,3-dichloropropene, 1,3-D, I'll be calling it through this, and an implementation of a pilot study that we're aiming towards coming in late summer, early fall. So next slide, please.
Ooh. Okay, I realized the presentation is in PDF. So let me download it first so I can advance it better.
Let's see.
Again, thank you for your patience. Zoom meeting number 1.
Yeah.
I'll start doing
a Wi-Fi o cómo estás conectada para Zoom?
Okay, let's
Okay.
just take a moment to double check that
No,
everyone.
es que no solo, parece que tenemos quejas de que no se puede oír bien.
Hannah, you want? I have it pulled up now. You want me to just do the screen share? Would that make?
Sure. Thank you.
No, como si te cortas,
I just wanted to quickly check with
como
Anna.
si te cortas de cada otra palabra, no se oye. Pero
Anna,
déjame, nomás que esta Heather me preguntó si estabas en Wi-Fi. Tal vez es la conexión.
Does that work for everybody?
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
I mean,
So-
let's take just a moment, please.
Okay, deja decirle a Heather.
Okay.
I just wanted to double check. I hear Anna speaking. Is it just my screen as a host or everyone can hear her?
We can all hear her.
Okay. Can we double check with Anna to make sure we're all good to go for the presentation, or we're trying to solve some technical difficulties?
Yes. Yeah, sorry, I was trying to solve some technical difficulties with the Spanish. Lilia's cutting off every other word, but she says she has full bars, and that's weird that you could hear me. I was in the Spanish channel, but yeah, she has full bars, but every other word is cutting off, so I don't know what's going on with that.
Well, that's not good news.
Yeah.
Maybe if she stops sharing video and just does audio, that might clear it up and make the connection a little more stable.
Okay, I'll let her. Oh,
That's a good
well,
suggestion.
you can both hear me. Lilia, parece que quieren que tal vez apagues el video. Y no. Ajá. Ok. Te oyes bien ahorita, pero creo que tal vez sea con Zoom, pero hay que tratar así.
Anna, any update?
Ok. Ahorita te oyes bien clara.
Again, thank you for your patience. It's a digital
Okay.
platform that sometimes is
Gracias,
challenging
Lilia.
to participate, and we just want to make sure that everyone has the technical capability and ability to participate and follow this meeting.
My speakers are in, so I can't hear you, but I can hear you. Listen, though. Go ahead. No.
It's always good to be the first one up, so I can really just take the
We're
brunt for you
We're
guys.
gonna test it on your presentation to make sure that we're all set with the next one.
Any way I can help. Any way I can help.
I forgot to tell you, by the way. I'll be testing the Spanish channel on your presentation.
There you go.
And we're all set. Any update? Have we resolved the
Hey,
issue?
Lilia.
Anna is not responding to me.
Sorry, what did you say, Hannah?
We're all set. Can we continue with the presentation? Can our Spanish-speaking participants hear?
She's asking them right now.
Okay, great.
Yeah, no one's answering if they can hear her.
Mm-hmm.
She sounds clear right now, but
well, sometimes, you know, that happens. And
oh, you lost the phone connection? Okay. Okay, let's continue and see if this works out, because she sounds really clear right now.
Okay, so we're gonna continue with the presentation, and Anna, let us know if we need to pause just to double check the sound one more time, okay? All right, with that second attempt, Min, it's all yours.
All right, thank you. So again, my name is Min with the AIR program for DPR. We're going to speak today with the 1,3-dichloropropene. I'll be calling it 1,3-D for most of this presentation, and then the pilot program that we've established to start in late summer, early fall. So with that, I just wanted to give you a brief overview of the outline of my presentation today, giving a brief background on the 1,3-D product itself, and then moving into our mitigation approach, what we're thinking, how we wanted to get there. And then we've come up with about a dozen mitigation options that we wanted to pilot. And with that, I'll talk about what those options are, what we envision the information gathered from that to accomplish. Speak a little bit about the pilot study itself. And I think the big component of this is a question and answer for the rest of the Shafter community to ask us anything that you may have. I'll be moving through this relatively quickly, mainly if you have the slides, feel free to always reach out to me afterwards. It's a lot of technical information, but I wanted to highlight a lot more of the items that were relevant specifically to Shafter. So I apologize if I move through things a little bit quickly, but I'm trying to just drill down to what's specific to to your community.
Min, I'm just going to interrupt you very briefly, just a friendly reminder. Lilia is translating for our Spanish-speaking participants, and as we move through the slides quickly, it's difficult to translate when someone speaks.
Yeah, and I'll try to speak. I'll keep that in mind as I pace through it. So,
thanks.
But my apologies if I move too fast. If it is, do let me know, and I'll slow down for y'all. So some background, 1,3-dichloropropene, obviously it's a pre-plant fumigant used for fumigation and control of nematodes, insects, and disease organisms in the soil. Specific to the Shafter area, it's pre-plant, and majority of it comes about for fruit and nut trees. I think there's a little bit of other crops in the area, strawberries, grapes, and carrot crops. Currently, it is listed as a restricted material, so there are restrictions in place for the use of the material. So there is specific requirements that a user must go through. In part, we work with the CAC to get a lot of that accomplished. So in part, due to a recent elevation in the 1,3-D measured concentrations, DPR is proposing additional control measures to mitigate, excuse me, 1,3-D acute health effects to bystanders. And to the right there, you can see the chart of some of our recent detections, which we've shown before. So mitigation approaches and available options. We were taking a look, my team was charged to take a look to see what we could accomplish. So we went to our foundation of using a Hydrus and air fume computer modeling software. This is, sorry, let me get this real quick. So this is DPR's, DPR uses this in coordination with a lot of external peer reviews. So it is a standard practice that we have that if we're introducing anything from our modeling, we put it out for comment period, review, and to ensure that it's of sound scientific judgment that we are able to move forward with this foundational document. So other options that we're looking to address in this acute exposure, put all these up real quick, sorry. So the possibility of limited or prohibiting 1,3-D applications, require use of TIF tarps, increased buffer zone distances, stringent application documentation, minimum soil content thresholds, and new reduced emissions methodology. All these are various options that we looked into in our attempt to find an answer, essentially. So for the pilot program, before I jump into this, I want to just touch on one item, which is we are still currently working and monitoring at the Sequoia Elementary School in Shafter. We have not, amidst all of this that's going on, we have not stopped our monitoring effects. In the beginning of the year, CARB was assisting us in monitoring that location. And they were set to finish out and complete their commitment to us by this month, I believe. Obviously, when February came around, there was a lot of unforeseen things that happened. So due to travel restrictions, due to staffing restrictions, DRB could no longer sample. So my staff has now moved in, and we've tried to take sampling in that area, just to make sure that there's no gap in our data. One thing that I will remind everybody is because of various restrictions that are in place because of the COVID, the economy, whatever it may be, we had to change our sampling methodology. So we're operating at a limited capacity due to the fact that we don't have the lab capability right now. So we are only sampling for 4 AMN sites, one of them being Shafter, and that includes only 1,3-dichloropropene right now. We had to forego the other fumigants at this time because we did not have the lab resources to continue on with it. Our hope is once we have a better understanding of, what the future is going to be for COVID-19 travel restrictions, whatever they may be, that we'll resume and reintroduce all of these pesticides that we normally monitor for. So just know that we're still out there, and I think we're still monitoring for the compound that is specific to Shafter to answer a lot of these questions that are going on here. So jumping back into the pilot program, some considerations that we had to take into account is 1,3-D is extensively used. It's for the last, from 2011 to 2015, it's 12.6 million pounds applied. Currently, there's no viable commercial scale alternative to it, and proposing various mitigation options we know will have some sort of cost effect, or may not achieve what we're trying to look at, or as far as an emissions reduction. So with that in mind, we selected the high use regions where we were located. So that includes Shafter, Parlier, and Delhi. And we're planning to test the efficacy and feasibility of the mitigation options that we're putting into place later this year.
Okay. Is it me, or suddenly it's silent?
We can hear you.
I think Min might be frozen for a minute here.
Min is frozen. Wow. Brian, when you said it's meeting number 1, maybe you shouldn't have said that. Okay.
I accept full responsibility for.
I mean, I'm not, well, let's take this moment while Min is trying to figure out his Wi-Fi, because I received a message from Anna that it's still a very choppy sound for Spanish-speaking participants as well. So let's try to solve 2 issues at once. And meanwhile, thank you for your patience, and let's try to figure out how can we continue this meeting number 1. Okay, I think we lost Min. I don't see him.
All right. Sorry, I don't know what happened there, but I got tossed.
It's okay. Maybe your family is suddenly decide to watch Netflix. And that affects the connection from my personal experience.
I hope not.
With regard to the Spanish translation issues, would it make sense to have our Spanish speakers and Lilia log into the conference call line?
We can certainly try that.
We do have a separate conference call line set up, I believe. Heather can give those details in the chat. And Anna, if you can mimic what Heather's done and turn them into Spanish so that folks on the chat can see how to do it in Spanish. Lilia, hopefully that will work for you.
Okay, Heather, are you gonna text the phone number to call in?
We're gonna drop it into the chat so everyone can see it.
Okay.
So if you click on chat.
Okay, so you want me to share it? Okay, for participants to click on chat.
Heather just dropped it into the chat.
So
And Heather will coordinate with Anna and Liliana on that.
okay, great. So should we wait just another minute or should we continue with the presentation, Jamie?
Let's give it 1 minute.
Okay.
Okay, so Lilia is gonna try and connect to the phone again because they had dropped earlier, but she noticed that no one was using the phone line. So we're gonna instruct the Spanish speakers to call the phone line. That's correct, right?
Correct. We just dropped it into the chat.
Okay.
Hannah, can you tell me where I guess I was having technical issues for a while? Like, do you know where I kind of started stuttering or skipped off or anything like that?
I think you were on either, let me look at the slides.
Min, I think you're on the previous slide. You were at the very bottom.
Of the previous, so I hadn't even touched the pilot program yet?
No, I think he did.
Oh, and I'm sorry. Maybe it was
the third bullet.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, you're at the end of this slide. Yeah.
Okay. I think that's where I thought I was.
Thank you, John.
All right, I think we can try and get going again.
Hold on a minute. Let me check with Lilia. It sounds like she's trying the phone, getting the phone number.
Thank goodness I got the 40 minutes. I would have not made the 20 minutes on this
Lilia,
one.
you need to mute.
I think we can still hear her a little bit. Better now? Heather, are they all set? Okay, Min. Attempt number 3, go ahead.
Third time's a charm. So,
Hopefully.
So what I was saying is during this pilot program period for the 1 year, we're hoping that the people participating in it will adhere to these DPR proposed mitigation options so we can fully test out what is happening out there and what's feasible and what's effective. Like I said before, we're planning for the beginning of September 2020, and that will run through a 1-year effort. So how are we trying to accomplish this reduction of 1,3-D emissions? So both US EPA and DPR offer a 60% buffer zone reduction credit when applicators use a TIF tarp for certain fumigation applications. So we took that as the target. So computer modeling conducted by DPR showed that 60% emissions reductions equates to at least a 60% buffer zone reduction for most of the fields or application rates that we were looking at. So therefore, this mitigation effort, DPR aims to reduce 1,3-D emissions by at least 60% compared to the standard application method, which is the 18-inch deep untarped application. So with that, we've identified several options to result in the emissions reduction of at least 60% comparable to that untarped fumigation. So visually, you can take a look at this is how we've kind of broken it down. So my program was in charge of taking a look at what we can do. So what is the equivalent technology here? Shafter community has been very vocal about their want for TIF tarping for 1,3-D applications. So we took a look at that and said, okay, what is the benefit of that TIF tarping, and what can we do to get that equivalent reduction? So what my team has come up with is 3 distinct options, but then there's various combinations of these options that will allow for either more efficacy or different flexibility for the farmer, depending on the crop, depending on the application rate, and the acreage size that is needed. So it boils down for that region to be 70% field capacity of the soil a water seal, either a post or pre-treatment for the application, and then this injection that's actually 24-inch depth injection. So you're actually injecting the fumigant further down, not allowing it to escape through the earth soil. So one of these options from our computer modeling, each one of these options by themselves, we're able to potentially provide similar reductions to that comparable to tarping. And then there's some additional benefits if you decide to combine them as well. So I'm gonna pull these 4 up. So like I said, I believe these 4 will probably be the most likely options used within the Shafter region. Obviously, again, we're trying to provide flexibility. So we know that there's different types of crops out there, different types of field conditions. So we're trying to give the grower, the applicator, various options that they can use to essentially maintain that level of reduction that we would get similar to TIF tarping. So obviously, to get that same effect, you can use TIF tarping itself, which is option number 1. Number 2, like I spoke about before, a pre-application moisture content of 7% field capacity. This is a barrier cap, usually about 3 to 9 inches on that the top of the soil. And then there's various irrigation requirements that we would put into place to get this to where it needs to be. Number 3 is a post-application seal. So after the fumigation has been placed, you would then come in and put a moisture cap on top of the soil, essentially acting as if you were putting tarp over, but it's just a moisture cap. And because the soil has that moisture, it's trapping the fumigant for a set amount of time comparable to that of a tarp. And then again, I think this is probably the most likely effect option. I mean, the requirement to inject at a lower depth. So instead of the traditional 18th or even the shallow 12-inch, we saw that injecting at a 24-inch depth of 130 actually gives us comparable emissions reductions to that of tarping. And that's because you're going deeper, the layers of soil on top of that, different moisture levels help to keep the cap down on the top. And then the next 2 slides, I'll kind of just show really quickly, but these are various combinations of these methods. So you have stuff like combining option 3 and 4. You can do a TIF tarping combined with an alternate of standard injection. So half the field is tarp versus untarped. And so all these are various kind of combinations of what I've already kind of explained. And this rounds out the last 4 options. 2 of the ones I wanted to highlight is really the last 2 there. If the grower can afford the buffer zone distances, we have a scenario where they can maintain that untarped fumigation if they are able to meet a specific acreage and injection rate. So for some, if for some crops, maybe they're injecting at a much lower rate on a much smaller buffer, much smaller block, and they have a 1/4 mile of buffer zone, even more. So they're able to do a traditional untarped fumigation without having adverse acute risk around the area. And this is the table that we put out for most of the growing community and farmers and applicators to get their input on. You can see on the right, these are our various application methods. On the top is the application rate at which they can be applied. All these assume that we're putting into place a 80-acre maximum block and 100-foot buffer zone for 7 days. That's what the MR says. The MR says that you can go at, let's say, number 1, you can do TIF at 100 pounds per acre with only those 2 restrictions. Those are the minimum restrictions, we're calling it. So as you move down, tarping, as you can see, you can use it up to the max rate of 332 pounds per acre with only meeting the 80 blocks and 100-foot buffer zone. And as you go through the different options here, there's various acreage size limitations. Let's see, pulling one out, let's see, number 6, if you go over to 200 pounds per acre, you can see that you can, if you're going by the traditional standard of 100-foot, you can only do 70 acres. That's what that top number is. If you want to be able to do the full 80 acres, you have to have at least a 200-foot buffer zone, as opposed to the minimum 100-foot buffer zone. And I know this is a lot to take in. So as everybody kind of takes a read of it and, sums up their thoughts, we're available. So definitely reach out to me. We can talk you through any of this if it's interest to you or anything like that. So the objectives of the program. So the pilot program's objective is to collect and evaluate monitoring data for these new methods. And we need to validate what we've done on a computer modeling estimate. Obviously, we've had conversations with growers and applicators, and some of our mitigation measures, we know they look great on a computer screen, but we don't know what it is like in a real life setting. So I think the pilot program affords us the ability to test that and to ensure that we're hitting the mark on what we're modeling out. It's again testing the feasibility of these measures and overall the effectiveness of it in the event that we aim to do a statewide implementation. So it's quite important that these 3 pilot programs, the data comes in and we're able to look at it and vet it to see what comes about it, because I think it holds great foundation for us moving forward. So enhanced monitoring during this program. So we're going to continue doing our ambient air monitoring. And then we're also going to include some intensive ambient air seasonal studies during the high use season. So both those things are, again, to validate what we're working on and making sure that the things that we're seeing is true to what we're modeling. And that's essentially what I said. So we'll also take a look on application site studies to measure and validate emissions from these new models. So that will be, we'll select a couple of ones that are specific to the region. So we'll be working with the growers, the CAC, the applicators of different regions to see what the best and most likely applications are. So just some looks at maps of what we're envisioning. So we're doing a 4 township block that we're asking for the pilot program to be implemented in. I don't know if you can see that on the screen, but that's Kern County. So that's Shafter, our monitoring site in the blue right there. And those are the 4 townships that we've selected. Those are specifically selected for us because when we're looking at weather data, geographic data, wind conditions will be coming from that northeast side. So we thought it would be the most appropriate to get data from those townships. And this should encompass essentially most, if not all, of the Shafter region. And just so you guys get an understanding, Merced and Stanislaus County is also included here, as well as Fresno County. So that's essentially what we've been working on, and we had presented this earlier, I want to say a couple weeks ago. Sorry, time is just, I don't have a good grasp of it right now, but with that, I'm able to answer any questions that I can at this time for anybody.
Great. Min, thank you so much for sharing potential 12 mitigation measures. So for the questions, please go ahead and raise your hand. And again, you're gonna go to the bottom of your screen and click on participants and click on the blue hand on the right-hand side. And you can unmute yourself or Kim will help you to unmute if you're having difficulty.
Hi, Hannah. Sorry to interrupt. Just one quick thing. Lilia? Lilia, can you hear me? Yeah, Lilia?
Lilia, can you check your chat box for us?
Yeah.
In Zoom?
Can you check your chat box? Thank you.
Thanks, Hannah.
Okay. Any questions for Min? Like you mentioned, it's a lot to take in. Okay, I see Gustavo clapping.
Is that a question, or are you reinforcing me here,
I
Gustavo?
have a question, but yeah, thank you for that presentation, first of all. Can you guys hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
we can.
Okay, cool. Yeah, thank you for that presentation, man. Very informative. Yeah, I definitely appreciate the fact that these measures and mitigation efforts are moving forward. In the midst of a lot, including budgetary cuts, very uh, very detrimental to our work. Interested in hearing slightly a little bit more about kind of the scale monitoring. I know there's been some discussions about a potential of a scale back or um, from a statewide perspective, but I wanted, just curious to see how that looks like here in Shafter, if that's going to continue. And then also if it continues, if it will continue to be the same amount of constituents being monitored, or if that's going to decrease as well. And kind of how that ties in, and this is probably a discussion for probably the next part, but a discussion of how that potentially ties into what's in the SERP as far as the pesticide notification, how DPR is working with the steering committee and the local ag commissioners, et cetera.
So as far as the budget cuts and the scale, it will not affect our ambient air monitoring in Shafter. We've committed to being in Shafter. Val Dosini, our director, has committed to being here. And so it's one of the 4 sites that we were able to save. With the budget cuts in place, the air monitoring network was 8 monitoring sites when we received the additional funding for the expansion. So unfortunately, we will not have that funding moving forward. So we will have to scale back to the network prior to that enhancement funding. So initially we were in charge, DPR was solely in charge of 3 sites. I'm working to possibly get a 4th site in there, but Shafter currently right now is one of the sites that we've pegged to remain as part of the AMN. So ambient air monitoring at Sequoia Elementary will continue. As far as other application or seasonal monitoring for the Shafter region and as part of the pilot program. That's currently under works right now. I don't have the details on that. We're still trying to have a conversation with all the responsible parties to figure out what we have and what we can do. Obviously, you probably don't all want to hear this, but it's tough right now resources wise for us. Our program is solely the only program right now doing this type of work. So my staff is trying to do its best we can to be everywhere we can be at this time. So if you're talking about us being here for an application site study, that's 4 days straight for a seasonal study. We're here 5 days a week for 12 weeks. So we're trying to move around resources. We're trying to figure out what we can and can't do. And we'll have continued conversation with the community steering committee, the CAC on our involvement. But for sure, we'll be here for the ambient air monitoring for the foreseeable future. I don't see us going away from that. Unfortunately, I think the other question was regarding notifications. I'm not involved in any of those conversations. Unfortunately, I don't have an answer for you. I know that there were some previous discussions. I think our management at CARB and a couple of groups were involved. I don't know the outcome of that, unfortunately. I can definitely go back and see what I can update you with, but as of right now, I haven't heard anything.
Yeah, no problem. And then to taking the discussion back, as far as the monitoring in the Sequoia Elementary, will it still consist of all the constituents that were being monitored, or would that be also scaled down to like the amount of pollutants or fumigants that are being monitored?
Okay. Yeah. As far as normally we would be monitoring for 32 pesticides. Right now, because of the lab scale back, our biggest factor right now is we don't have the lab has scaled down, so there's nobody doing analysis for us. So right now, the only thing that we can do is 1,3-D because we focused all of our resources into that to ensure that A, we can kick off the pilot program, and B, we were addressing the issues of this community specifically. Right now, with our limited capacity, we are doing 1,3-D, 1,3-dichloropropene only, and a little bit of methyl bromide, but that doesn't show up in this area. once we get a little bit clearer picture on what we're able to do as far as just the travel restrictions from COVID-19, we should be coming back online, given that our lab comes back online and redoing all 32 pesticides. So we will be back at full capacity sometime, I'm hoping by the end of this year.
So the scale back from the 32 pesticides to the one, which is 1,3-D,
Yeah.
is mostly because of the public health crisis.
Yeah, and that's solely because of that, because we were not able to have a lab to analyze it right now. And if you've ever been out to our station, we do everything via these sorbent cartridges that have to be pulled in and taken in, and they have to be analyzed within 2-3 weeks. So the problem is samples we probably could sample, but they would probably not get analyzed due to the capacity of our lab. So we went with the 1,3-D, which is a canister sample, and that holds for a much longer time scale.
Okay, great. Thank you, Min.
Thank you.
Bianca, I saw your clap. Do you have a question for Min?
I actually did had a question, but Gustavo and Ming already asked each other, so I got the response back. But I was actually going to ask about the 32, and he responded back because of the COVID. So thank you. Thank you for addressing that.
Mm-hmm.
Great, thank you. Any other questions for Min?
Not showing any in the chat box.
Okay, well, if anything comes up in the next 5 or 10 minutes, please type those questions in the chat box. Min, I assume you stay around for a while, right?
Yeah, I'll stick around, so I'll be here should you guys need anything else.
You will answer the questions, and as I mentioned, the chat box is recorded, so we will be able to pull out all the questions that were not answered and provide some answers eventually. Okay, great. Thank you again for this very detailed presentation and for clarifying capacity, your team's capacity. A lot of things are changing and shifting, so we all have concerns how it's gonna look like a month from now, a year from now. Our next agenda item is air monitoring plan.
Disculpe que le interrumpa, yo no he escuchado nada de la junta. Su voz se oye cortada y...
So Annabelle just stated that she hasn't really been able to hear the entire meeting, that the translator's translation has been extremely choppy. So she wants some assistance on that.
Gustavo or Anna, how are we doing this now? I thought we were going to have folks actually call in to a separate conference call line that was not a Zoom line, and actually take Lilia off of Zoom because the Zoom connection wasn't working. Did that happen?
No, it didn't happen. Lilia continued on Zoom, and yeah, it is very choppy.
Is there a reason that we can't get Lilia?
What was that, Lilia?
Okay, we continue to have some technical difficulties. It's unfortunate because we want everyone to participate and hear the information and follow and ask questions. So again, thank you for being patient with us today as we're trying to figure out how can we continue this meeting.
So Heather, I think you're the expert on this. So we need to give Lilia some very specific step-by-step instructions. And we need to give our Spanish speakers through the chat step-by-step instructions. So my understanding is that Lilia is going to have to use a non-Zoom conference call number. So she's going to have to still stay on the Zoom so that she can listen to it.
But she will need to mute herself, mute her Zoom, just use it for video, for visual, and everything she does should be through the teleconference phone. But I think our issue is that she is not connecting through a Wi-Fi network. I think she's using a cell tower to connect to Zoom.
Hannah, you can pull Lilia back in. You can shut the interpretation down and pull her back into the main channel. If you go into the
Yes, we can hear Lilia.
part, you can end it and it'll pull Lilia back in. And then we can recircle and, you know, use the conference line.
Okay.
Myself, when I mute myself, I can still hear you all talking. So when I was on the phone, I had it coming in from the phone and from the Zoom. In other words, when I mute, I don't mute you. I mute myself to you. So I wasn't sure what to do. So I had sound on both mediums. And then because they're so close together, I was hearing myself talk to myself on the phone. There was feedback.
So what we need to do, Lilia, is have all of the folks on the phone mute their Zoom call so that they're also only hearing you on the phone.
And turn your volume down on your computer or wherever you're doing your Zoom call.
Correct.
Okay.
So you're hearing feedback through the telephone line of their computer of
Okay, so I'll put the volume down and I'll go ahead and let's see, where was that chat?
Translate into the teleconference line. Please.
Yeah, let me dial again on the phone and I'm going to put the access code this time and then I'll lower my volume on my
exactly.
iPad.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Nada más para todos los participantes, para oír esta junta con audio solamente, vean el chat box aquí en Zoom. Está una caja donde puede chatear. Ahí están las direcciones a qué número pueden hablar y el código de acceso para que puedan oír a Lilia por teléfono normal, no a través de Zoom.
Okay, well, we're gonna give it another couple minutes to
thank you, everyone.
Translator to switch to a different phone line, and I don't know, we've learned a lot of troubleshooting in this meeting.
Every scenario possible. Thank you for your patience.
In addition to 12 mitigation options.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, just gonna give it another minute, and Anna, do you mind to let us know when Lilia is all set so we can continue this meeting with air monitor and plan update?
Yeah, I'm calling right now to connect. And also, ahora también para todos los que están conectándose por teléfono, opriman estrella número 6 para mudarse ustedes mismos. Yeah, I'm connecting. I'll let you know.
Thank you. Internet connection is really unpredictable. You test it 5 times before the meeting, and the meeting starts, and it refuses to cooperate.
But the biggest takeaway is people can't hear.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you on the Zoom, Lillian.
Okay, it asked me for a host number. What is it?
We're getting it. Hold on.
Okay, let me see if I can.
Heather's getting it because it's unique to Heather, Hannah. I don't think you'll have it.
Okay.
One, 124.
1124. Okay.
Okay, we see that Heather is on mute.
I actually found the problem from what's going on. There were 2 people in the same household using the Zoom and close by, so it was having that friction. So I was able to resolve them. One of them is gonna get out.
Thank you, Bianca. So yes, when two Zoom computers are next to each other, sometimes it can happen. Can we confirm with Lilia that she's all set?
I'm on the line and I don't hear her.
Okay.
Lilia, are you on the conference call? Can you hear us?
So Lilia is on mute right now. Let me unmute her.
It's working. Anna just gave us the thumbs up.
Okay. Okay, great. Wow, I'm afraid to say, like, and now. Okay, well, hopefully, fingers crossed that our second part of the meeting is gonna go a little more smoother. And with that, I'm gonna turn to Brad, who is gonna share with us updates regarding the air monitoring plan and localized air monitoring activities in Shafter community. And just a friendly reminder to hold your questions until the end. You're welcome to type these questions in the chat box. And the copies of the Spanish version of the presentation, you either have a physical copy or you can access it online on the website so you can follow the presentation along. Brad, it's all yours.
Good afternoon. Can everyone see my screen with the main presentation slide?
So we can see your screen and hear you well.
Perfect. Okay, I told my daughter that she's already watched Frozen twice today. She can't watch it right now, so I should have good internet. Good evening. For those who do not know me yet, my name is Brad Dawson. I am the Supervising Air Quality Instrument Specialist, overseeing the monitoring done in the AB 617 program in Fresno and in Shafter as well, and moving on to Stockton. So I'm kind of overseeing all three of those communities right now. And tonight, we're just going to address where we are currently at and what we've been doing to move forward in the Shafter community. There was a letter that was sent out. I'm sure a lot of you have already read it and may have already seen the district's response. I will be discussing some of those topics in this presentation, but if I do not, hold your questions if it was pertaining to that letter, because our next presentation may probably answer that question. So moving forward, let me see how this is going to work with, there we are. My first Zoom presentation, so I want to make sure that all works good for you. Okay. So we are still continuing to conduct localized air monitoring for the Shafter community. We are continuing to deploy more monitoring platforms as recommended in the network design by this steering committee. We have approved contracts for all of our sites. However, due to the current epidemic, we have yet to get authorized signatures back. We are still, actually just a couple of minutes before this meeting started, I was still going back and forth with some of our site contacts to make sure that all the literature in those contracts are correct so we can get those signatures and move forward with the electrical upgrades. And I'll discuss more about that later. We are actively also using our van in the outer 7-mile radius area that was identified by this committee as well. And we have also been expanding to deploy the van to some of the monitor sites that we haven't deployed a stationary monitor at yet as well. Since late 2019, we have been conducting biweekly air sampling where we send our filters and canisters to an independent laboratory to analyze and identify compounds, elements, VOCs found in our supplied samples. And I'll touch more on that in a couple more slides. Here's just a reminder, this is the map of where we have planned to deploy our monitors at, as directed by the steering committee. You can see where we have some of the stationary monitors inside the 7-mile radius and highlighting the van's movements outside of that area. And here is, on the left, is the picture of our PM 2.5 monitor that is still up and running in at the Chapter DMV. It has been live and streaming since February of 2019. And on the right is actually one of our newer things. It's a multi-pollutant air monitor known as an air pointer. And here is actually a picture of the two combined together on a trailer that we will be deploying to Shafter. This should be going to the Sequoia Elementary site. This has the PM 2.5 monitor piggybacked to the air pointer, so we can combine both units on one individual platform. And here's a picture of the air monitoring trailer that will be deployed at the farm labor community at the north end of the Shafter community. And the picture on the right is of our mobile air monitoring van, which we've been using extensively in the Shafter community. So we have been conducting real-time PM 2.5 monitoring since February of 2019 at Shafter DMV site. And soon after, we installed the PM 2.5 monitor at Grimway Academy. Per this committee's request and with the state's assistance, a PM10 monitor was also installed at Shafter DMV site to monitor the almond harvest season. And that was completed in December 2019. So we ran that PM 2.5 monitor, or I should say CARB with their assistance ran that monitor up until then. At the DMV site, we are conducting also PM 2.5 and VOC speciation. But once our trailer is installed at the Farm Labor Center, we will move those samplers there to get a better idea of what's going on at that northern region. And our mobile air monitoring van has been sampling in that 7-mile radius, focusing on the airport industrial area, Mexican colony, the agricultural heavy north region, and the dairies to the west. We've also expanded our monitoring, as I stated before, to monitor outside of Golden Oak Elementary, Sequoia Elementary, and also outside the farm labor camp to kind of get some baselines of those areas. And some of our pending sites right now, we've been working with the Richland School District and Kern Housing Authority for the farm labor camp. Both contracts, as I said as before, are awaiting approval. And we are ready to move forward with electrical infrastructures once we get those final signatures on paper. In the meantime, we have been using our vans to monitor in those areas, as I stated before. And once we fully develop those sites, then we'll focus those vans primarily on only that 7-mile radius as identified by the steering committee. Here, we have a comparison of our of the last quarter of our Shafter DMV and Shafter Grimway PM 2.5 emissions. You can see on that Shafter DMV line, that's the orange line, and the Grimway Academy is the yellow line. They trend very well during this 2020 quarter one. And for comparison, we have added the Corcoran air monitoring site and also our Bakersfield air monitoring site, just for some reference. You can see Corcoran, the blue line kind of being a little staggered. Our air monitoring site there had some instrument malfunctions, so we've eliminated the skewed data. And right here, we have the average over the entire quarter, showing our Shafter DMV at 10.0 on average, and Shafter Grimway at 10.3 on average. And it is to note that our sites on average for this quarter was a couple of microgram per meter cubed cleaner than the other surrounding communities, the nearest sites to Shafter. And here for our mobile van monitoring, this is just pinpointing where we've been focusing our vans at in that 7-mile radius. You can see at the top, site A is the North Shafter site where we're looking at those agricultural operations. Site B is centered around 4 different dairies out there. So that way we can kind of get an ambient sample of what that dairy heavy rich west side is. C is right outside of 99 and Lerdo, right by the airport in that industrial area. And then site D is right outside of Mexican Colony, because that was a site that was suggested by this steering committee as well. From our mobile monitoring moving forward, around this location to location, we've been observing the following pollutants here since January 2020. It is to note that during our van outings, we have not detected any measurements that exceeded the federal standard, whether that's a 24-hour or 8-hour averages. We have not exceeded any of those standards during this period. And it is also to note that our instruments did not detect any BTEX during those times that we were out. We have also been deploying our mobile air monitoring vans to locations that we have yet to deploy stationary monitors at, as I've mentioned before. This helps gather, this is a couple samples from PM 2.5, NO2, and ozone that we've measured outside of Mexican Colony. We didn't include the BTEX, H2S, SO2 readings that we did also read as well, just because they were non-detect and doesn't really show good on a chart either. But you can kind of see what the average is during this time. I think this was March 25th is when we took this sample. And for this chapter DMV site, where we've been conducting PM 2.5 and VOC speciation analysis, where samples are collected and sent to independent laboratories for analysis. This is one of those tests. This is the PM 2.5, where samples are gathered on a filter, and we send those samples out to that lab. You can see that none of the times that we've sampled, we were over the 35 parts per, microgram per meter cubed federal PM 2.5 standard. And you can kind of see the overall breakdown of the pollutants that we're seeing that are making up that PM 2.5 value. We have also been collecting air samples for VOC sampling since late December 2019. We send our gas samples out to an independent lab that tests for 68 different volatile organic organic compounds. The 3 major ones that we continuously see pop up week after week after week is methanol, ethanol, and acetone. Of these, only methanol has an associated reference exposure level, which is indicated in that orange line right there on the chart. And just the reference exposure level, or the REL as we acronym everything, is a health risk measurement established by the California Office of Environmental Health and Hazard Assessment. So that's what we use as a baseline to kind of gather some type of relationship to the values that we're receiving or seeing. And from all those VOCs, those 68 different compounds that we're testing for, we've only detected 9 so far from all of our sampling that we've conducted. And this bar chart here kind of shows where we are at with methanol, ethanol, and acetone. Week by week by week, we're always seeing some type of reading. Everything else is very sporadic, maybe just a couple of parts per billion as it's being detected. But those are the 9 compounds that we have detected so far. And as a reminder, CARB is building a data portal called AQView to display and provide all live and historical monitoring data. We have been uploading monthly data to this portal, and it is available for you to download. And as we bring more monitors online and AQView develops, this will be a live table that you can view on top of what we are providing at the district. You can always see our live monitors at our website, at this AB 617 webpage as well. Both links for the district and for AQView is available on this slide, so you can click that and go to those sites if you forgot those links. And then we are developing, or we have developed a quarterly reports of all of our data from all the sites that we've gone to every single time that our van has stopped. And we've recorded, we have been recording all of that information, and we are compiling that right now in a quarterly report. So once a quarter, we should be having that available online for you to look at and download all of the boring data. But right now we are compiling over a year's worth of data. So it's taken us a little bit longer to get that all tidied up, make sure that we can review all that data and make sure that all the data is good and valid for the community. But with that, I think my presentation is done. Do we have any comments or questions?
Great, thank you, Brad, for sharing this very detailed information about all the great work the district has been doing.
It looks like we have a question from Tom France.
Hey, Tom.
Yes. You know, we did ask for PM10 monitoring to be in place very quickly so that it would be there for the almond harvest, but we never intended for the PM10 monitoring to stop at the end of December. And we really need to get that back for this summer right now. PM10, as you know, is dust. We're already finding dust on our tabletops as the summer commences, and we'd like to know what's in our air. So please ask CARB or CARB's on this call. We've got to get that PM10 monitor going again. Another reason it needs to go is there were very high readings in September, October, November, December. In fact, there were 4 violations of the old 1971 PM10 standard of 150 micrograms over 24 hours. That constitutes a violation. There should be no more than 3 violations over 3 years, and we had 4 violations in 3 months. That's another reason we need to continue to monitor PM10 to see if it's consistently that bad in Shafter. No one asked us if we wanted that PM10 monitor removed at the end of December, and the assumption was it would keep going indefinitely. Another question I have on the PM 2.5 speciation is you have black carbon and organic carbon. Just to clarify, which one of those would be from wood burning?
So without me having the source available, that kind of gets a little bit blurry. Just want to specify that out. Just want to identify organic carbon comes from a lot of different sources, predominantly from fuels consisting of wood, to petroleum, to industrial and mobile sources. So that's why you see a predominantly heavy organic carbon to that black carbon. Black carbon is going to be the darker sooty materials, but depending on the fire, it could be depending on that. But that's kind of how it's being differentiated in this study.
And diesel soot comes under one of those?
Diesel soot would be primarily black carbon is how I've understand the laboratory's analysis of it.
So what I noticed right away in January and February, a lot of organic carbon, it seems to taper off as we get into March. And of course, the air is warmer and there would be less wood burning for heating. So we'd like to know if there's a relationship there between the winter months and the organic carbon that's in the air and wood burning. And so we need more.
That's something that will be continuing because we will be monitoring for long-term periods in this area. So once we get more seasonal data and continue to give reports to the steering committee, we'll be able to provide a better answer to that question.
Okay, and I noticed a lot of ammonium sulfate, sometimes rivaling equal to ammonium nitrate. What is the source? What's the most likely source of the SOx in our air that is allowing ammonium sulfate to form? And is this normal throughout the valley, the amount of ammonium sulfate more or less equal to ammonium nitrate?
I think right now it'd be premature to actually pinpoint or be able to identify where something is coming from directly or why. Once we get more of a seasonal impact, the summer months come on and our PM will increase. It may provide a better picture as we move forward and understand the full impacts of the pollution profile for the Shafter community.
Okay.
Hey, Tom, this is John Klassen with the Air District. Thanks for those questions. And, those are really good questions that we will be digging into next as we continue to collect more data and see what the PM speciation profile looks like in Shafter versus Bakersfield or Fresno, looking at the differences, thinking about the sources that could be contributing to the different components here. So those are all really good next steps that we'll be doing to better understand what the contributions are.
Okay, and one final question. Although methanol was detected below the hazardous level, the methanol is not necessarily originating in the neighborhood around the DMV site. But we would really like to know where that methanol is coming from. And is this common? I mean, is this level of methanol throughout the valley, for example, or is this something unique now to the Shafter speciation? And can you detect methanol by driving around with the van? Is there any way to pinpoint where this methanol may be coming from better?
So just to clarify, where the monitors are at that are sampling for the ethanol acetone is at the DMV site, and it's not attached to the van. So the van is not going to be contributing to any VOC measurements of this. And actually, yes, we've actually seen the three compounds be prevalent in our Fresno community as well. But again, this is just the initial. We were able to get the stuff up online this winter time. And then once we have more seasonal impacts and be able to see the trends, is it a seasonal, is it a constant, we'd be able to provide more impact or more information onto that. I can say that methanol is prevalent in pretty much everything. So that's going to be your from, pretty much everything, including automotive exhaust. It's going to be, everything has methanol in it in the gaseous profile, from your wood burning smoke to your combustible sources from your factories, from everything. So it's really hard just to pinpoint one source for methanol, but we do see it in both Fresno and Shafter so far.
Okay, so if there's any way possible, I'd like to see any dairy monitoring, somehow get an idea of the amount of methanol coming off of the dairies. We know a lot of ethanol comes off of the silage, but we also know that there's methanol there. And if there's any way to measure that, we'd really appreciate it at the dairies.
Thank you for that. We'll take note of that.
That's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you for these questions and bringing various sources of concerns up. We have a couple action items from this discussion, so thank you. Gustavo, I saw that you're clapping. Do you have a question, or are you just clapping as an expression, as a reaction?
Both. Yeah, I was reaffirming the information that was being shared. Thank you, Brad, for that detailed explanation. And I'm very excited and happy to see that, as a lot of things were going bad in these recent months, at least the air quality was decreasing. So I'm glad to see the data be translated. So I appreciate that. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Brad? Comments, reactions?
Sure.
Okay. I'm seeing none. And just a friendly reminder, as we move on to the next agenda item, please use the chat box if you can think of any other questions as we continue with the meeting. So I wanted just to briefly circle back to our presentation about pesticides as we were trying to multitask here with translation, troubleshooting. We had one more question from committee members, and since we have a little bit of time in our agenda, let's go ahead and have that question from Gustavo. Min, if you don't mind.
Yes, definitely. My question was regarding on an update from the pesticide notification conversation. And I honestly thought it was going to be talked about here in the pesticide measures update. I just assumed, so that's my fault. But if possible, I'd really like to, have that discussion. That way, I know there's other conversations that have been going on, but I would really appreciate that the entire steering committee is aware of them. It's not just a small group of folks of us that are participating in this, but rather everyone has an opportunity to intake that information and maybe generate any comments that might be had.
Yeah, Gustavo, thank you for that. And I'll go back and I'll convene with my executive team. Like I said, I wasn't involved in it, so I don't have anything to speak on, but I'll get back to them and see what they have. And at the next opportunity when we have clear wording, I'll be able to share that once I get it all clear.
Thank you, Gustavo. Any other questions, comments, reactions before we move on with the next agenda item?
I don't know, is there anybody else, maybe like the ag commissioner or that have any updates on the notification?
Just to clarify, Bianca, and maybe it's just clarification for me, notification on what?
The pilot notification for Shafter.
Anyone has an answer to this? Anyone from the Air District? I see some. So it seems like there's no answers at the moment, but Bianca, what we're doing, we are capturing all the unanswered questions and all the action items in this meeting is recorded. We're capturing that in the follow-up notes, and we will capture this question and we'll try to provide the information to you in the future.
And Hannah, we do have a question from Linda Martin.
I had a question on, Tom was mentioning that the harvest would be starting and things like that, and I know we will get more dust. When are our programs going to start? Are we going to vote on those, on which ones we were going to bring forward as a committee? If we were going to do ag barriers or, some of the stations for the electric vehicles. When is that going to happen? Because I also know that you said that we had a timeline on the funds that would be available, and I'm wondering if that timeline has started, one, and two, can that be pushed back with all the delays that we've had with COVID? We're having a hard time meeting right now, and I would think we're going to have a really hard time getting these programs out to the community.
I can maybe start, and then if there's, or Todd, I didn't see you there. That's okay.
Yeah. Hi, Jessica. Hi, it's Todd DeYoung, the Director of Grants and Incentives. Great question. We've actually already begun, and you're absolutely correct. There is a timeline associated with the funding that's available for this particular year. The issue with your question about pushing back the deadline is a great question, and it's actually one that we've been working with CARB to see if there is any way to look at some sort of COVID-related delays and the impact that that's had on the industry. Even getting new equipment is more difficult. Businesses are not necessarily in the best position to be purchasing a lot of new equipment right now. So there are some very valid points and very valid concerns that would lead you to believe that some sort of delay or extension to those deadlines would be necessary. And so we're absolutely working with CARB on those issues right now. Just in terms of what we're doing with getting the existing CERT measures off the ground, there are a certain number of those that we're working on that we can do right now. Those are included in the community air protection guidelines that have been put forth by the Air Resources Board. Those are your traditional, Carl Moyer program type programs and projects. A lot of the CERT measures actually require us to take those through a new process. And I think we've talked about it to this group before. Chapter 6 of the CAP guidelines, or the Community Air Protection Guidelines, provides an outline, or will provide an outline for taking these programs that aren't included in the chapter through a process to get them approved to spend the AB 617 funds on. And so what we're doing right now is we're working with the Air Resources Board. They're about to approve the Chapter 6 guidance, and we're working with them right now on providing that framework. We're actually running the first couple of scenarios through that framework to get those CERT measures approved so that we can start using the funds on those. So we're moving forward on the programs that are already included and trying to find eligible participants that meet the criteria for inclusion in the CERP. And then those that don't necessarily meet those criteria right now that need to be taken through that process for Chapter 6. We're working with the Air Resources Board on finalizing Chapter 6, and then we're going to be submitting those project plans for approval.
So a question, we had bumped up the funding for Shafter for the school filtration systems. Is that going to be part of Chapter 6, or is that something that would be available to them now? I mean, they've got some really strict CDC guidelines coming through. You know, I know it's not going to clean up the sickness that's going on, but anything to help clean up the air might be helpful as they try and work through getting the students back in the class, even with smaller amounts of kids. And are those 100% covered, or is the school going to have to come up with some money? Because I know that the budgets are going to be really tight this year.
Yeah. And again, great question. So those are actually already included. So those do not have to be taken through this new process for Chapter 6. Those are included in the CAP guidelines already. And so we're already moving forward with looking at contractors and trying to define the scope of these projects, working with the school districts to get these things done and implemented fairly quickly. Understanding that it was one of the prioritized CERT measures from the committee. And just to answer your earlier question about prioritizing, we've been through multiple rounds of prioritization with the group, and we've had some exercises that we've gone through. And so we're using the results from those exercises to prioritize the CERT measures that we're working on, both the ones that are already included in in the CAP guidelines, as well as those that will need that enhanced approval under Chapter 6.
Is there an outline available for us to see the prioritization somewhere on your website?
So maybe I'll cut in really quickly because there are a couple of things. So it's the prioritization that Todd is talking about. We shared at a couple of steering committee meetings, but you bring up a good point, and we're trying to make them front and center, all of the measures, just so we can kind of have good status updates on everything. But actually what we planned on doing during the wrap up today was let you know that we would like to send out maybe a comprehensive reminder from Todd's group of all of the types of measures that still need to go through that CAP funding sort of guidance process. And then that will maybe help get us some feedback on what this committee wants to hear about, at least at the next couple of meetings as we kind of move forward, because I think it's understandable that we can't take every single measure all at once. We're going to have to kind of work on those guidelines one at a time. And so kind of understanding that from the committee will be really good. We also, in our Fresno steering committee, they also have the air filtration measure. And we were thinking, because it's sort of a similar process, of kind of convening a group subcommittee So I'm really just giving you a preview of what the end of the meeting was going to be, and soliciting this group to see who would want to be involved in a subcommittee to answer those, literally those exact things that you brought up, Linda, are so important and things for us to keep in mind. And instead of having it take up a really long part of this meeting, seeing if there's people who are really focused or really involved in school districts to be part of that subcommittee to help inform Todd's team on how we move forward with that measure.
Thank you. Linda, thank you for asking these questions about really critically important issues, and more to come. We will continue working on that. Okay, with that, I would like to move us along so we can end up at 5 p.m. and folks will get back to cooking dinners for those of you who like cooking, not me. Our next agenda item is the response to the comment letter. Just a little bit of background for those who are not familiar with what the comment letter, committee members send out 17 questions and requests to the AIR district, and the response was posted online. It's on the district's website, the letter and the response in Spanish and in English. And the letter was linked, hyperlinked in your agenda for those of you who haven't had a chance to look at it. And with that, I'm gonna turn to Jessica, who is gonna provide some update on the status of these letters and the next steps. You're on mute, Jessica.
There we go, sorry. I was trying to simultaneously mute and unmute myself in Zoom while sharing my screen. So I am not going to go, by the time I go one by one, that will take up the whole meeting and not leave room for questions. So I'm just going to high level sort of talk about the comprehensive process that went into answering these questions. And then we'll just kind of take questions. And we have, I believe, all the experts here, or as many as we could get on the call today. So if there are specific questions or follow-up items, I think this would just be a good chance to take advantage of those of us that are on the call. So really the first several questions on here were great follow-ups from the committee members. If you recall, or you were part of this process early on last year, there was a similar inventory request. And there were some follow-up items that we as the district and CARB certainly needed to follow up on. So we really appreciate the follow-up questions. And we hope that a lot of this, at least as best as we could, answered some of those specifics. And so that really goes for this first couple of questions. There were questions about dairies in the area and the emissions that we could see just within this particular 617 boundary. As well as just an update on how we will eventually continue to get more and more specific information about these dairies. The second question came with actually an attachment, and all of this is kind of at the end of the item, but essentially we located, based on our permit knowledge, the units that were requested from the facility and our knowledge of all of the different emissions inventory data for those different units, which hopefully answers the question and provides sort of that detail that they were the requesters were looking for. And so all of that again is attached and the details are kind of at the end of this letter. Similarly, for question number 3, this was specifically about IC engines and ag pumps. As you recall, one of our measures is to try to replace or incentivize the replacement of anything that's running off of natural gas or diesel with electricity. And so that is sort of understanding what the emissions are currently will help us understand what those reductions will be. And so that's what this kind of is answering. And again, similarly, we will be working with the community as kind of to Linda's point, as we move forward and looking at the different incentives measures, should this be one that people still want to pursue kind of rapidly here, we can continue to engage the ag folks on getting this measure if that's where we want to go as a committee still. This fourth question, we're hoping gives a lot more sort of detailed information that was requested specifically for IC engines at dairies. So again, hopefully you have time to take a look at this or ask us any questions between now and forever about any of this information. But these are the 5 dairies that are located within the 7-mile radius, the Shafter boundary. This Question 5 seems like the same answer, but it was a specific question about this facility. And so it's kind of all comprehensive in the answer to question 2 as well. So that's why it kind of looks the same. And then question 6, I believe, was the last question that was sort of a repeat or re-request from last year. This was asking for it was a kind of an interesting question. We understand that obviously not every single facility operates the same every day of the year. And so there might be sort of different seasons that facilities or source types might emit more or less throughout the year. And so the district and CARB worked together to put together an area-wide and a facility source list that listed out the monthly emissions. And so you can sort of see and understand that there definitely will be emissions in seasonal types of operations that are higher than other types of months or other months in certain types of operations. And so that's what this is. And again, it's attached at the end of this. And then this, I'll go over very, very quickly, but this was a lot of the information that was requested that I think Brad went over. But this, we also provide links for those that want to see where the data is monthly uploaded, as well as any recent updates we gave on the data. And so that's what all of these different links are for. Number 2 was asking about purple air sensors. And if you recall, those are sort of those low-cost sensors that are placed kind of throughout different communities. We do have one in Shafter and one at Bakersfield that are both right next to where we have regulatory air monitoring stations. And so what we did here is we kind of showed, based on the request, sort of the tracking of the purple air, which are the dotted lines, and the regulatory air monitoring stations, which are the official air monitoring stations that are calibrated and maintained by either the air district or CARB, and just sort of showed how they track. And you can kind of see in each of these quarters, and we explained this above, that they track similarly. When you see that when they're high together, they're high together. When they're low, they're low. But we tend to see volatility in the purple air sensor. So it was just kind of an interesting look at it for those of you that are interested in understanding how those sensors behave a little differently. And especially these are quarter 3. So that's like the summer months tend to be lower PM. So it kind of tracks a little bit closer to the regulatory monitors. Where in quarter 4 and quarter 1, so those are sort of our winter PM months, when we tend to see higher PM 2.5, the higher we go, those purple air sensors tend to be a little more volatile. So they're certainly good for trends. And for those that were interested in this data, you can kind of start to understand the difference. And then here, again, I'm not going to go into really any detail, but this is based on the requests from the Lerdo Highway traffic at Golden Oak Elementary. You can see the different hourly average readings for the different pollutants that we measure in the van that was there. Same thing with Mexican Colony, another request from the committee and from this requested letter, but it was certainly a committee-wide request. This is the monitoring near the local dairies. I think that's something that Tom just brought up a little bit. And that's certainly something we can continue to do more, but this just happens to be what we did in January. And then this is the results of the monitoring at labor camp. As Brad just mentioned in his update, we're going to continue to monitor what we can with the van until we kind of get an agreement in place to place that trailer. But I'm glad we got to go out there with the van, which is certainly the point of having that mobile monitoring. And then finally, this is for monitoring, this is the result of the monitoring at the industrial sites. That's that Lerdo Highway and Highway 99 intersection. And this is short-term monitoring, and then we did actually longer-term monitoring in April. And you can see those here. And then, oops, I lied about last monitoring. There's one more monitoring. We just showed there was requested to get the hourly data. So we just linked that hourly data has been available. So we provided links to the real-time data that you can see and go back in time and see any day. And it's kind of plotted out nicely. And then here, the monitored hourly values are uploaded monthly in a database format. So if you're interested in doing extra data analysis, or that's kind of why it was requested, you can certainly click there. Otherwise, this is the same information that Brad just presented in those nice graphs for us. And then finally, I'm not going to go into any detail about this because this was provided by CARB, but if there are questions, we do have these folks on the line. This was DMV information about the number of private vehicles registered in Shafter by age. And so it's actually also by passenger car type. So that's definitely interesting. And they used zip code analysis based on DMV data, so they can go into more detail if requested. And here you can just see, this is the primary zip code that's within Shafter. And based on the way that DMV data is coded, this was sort of the best way to make sure we got all of that information. The same goes for CARB's involvement in gathering the yard locomotives question. And so you can certainly ask CARB if you have any questions, but there is sort of a summary of where the rail yards are attached to the end of this response. And then finally, for CARB information, they had a yard tractor question as well. That is something that the CARB's in-use off-road diesel-fueled fleets regulation does have reporting requirements, and that's how they gathered that data. So you can see that data attached here. And then finally, for the whole letter, in terms of at least the individual responses, we did provide a summary of all of the incentives that have been provided within the 7-mile radius in the past 5 years, and all of the details are attached as well. So thank you for indulging me. I want to give several minutes for any specific questions, and I'll just take them or direct them to who they go to now.
Great, thank you, Jessica, for going line by line and sharing the responses. Kimi?
Yes. Thank you so much. It looks like we have questions from Linda, Martin, and Tom France so far. So Linda, you can go first.
I don't have a question specific to this, but I did have a question for Scott. I was wondering how it went from the CARB visit. They had talked about possibly discussing with BNSF about getting the trains to stop doing their back and forth, which, you know, backs up all the traffic at the Los Angeles intersection and also the traffic going to Golden Oak. Of course, we can't really monitor how that's going because no one's been allowed out of the house, but I was wondering if they had a chance to talk to BNSF about that.
Unfortunately, Linda, the meetings were scheduled to happen with Richard Corey, our executive officer, and the railroads in May. And so with all of this, that obviously has been deferred until we can all get back and be doing in-person meetings and so at this point, Richard Corey was scheduled to meet with kind of each of the larger railroads in May as follow-up to a previous meeting that they had as a large group, but those private meetings have not happened yet. And Linda, we did have our rail group put together a response, and I thought that I'd emailed that to you, and I thought that it might go out as part of this, but I'll circle back and make sure that that piece that also got translated gets out to the committee as well. I'll maybe get that over to Heather or to Jessica and ask that piece maybe gets sent out separately.
Sorry, are you talking about this? I just didn't happen to not share, or?
There was actually another. It was in addition to that. That it was just all text, but it was kind of a combo dealing with this as well as addressing the question that Linda had posed during the tour as far as concerns about all the switching activity in Shafter. So we could maybe get that out separately, but it really kind of, in essence, Linda, the emails that I sent you kind of offline just captures that same information, but came directly out of our rail group. So I'll work to make sure, I'm pretty sure that's translated, and I'll make sure I'll work to make sure that gets out to the district with a request. Maybe they get that out to the committee as well. So sorry, I don't have a better update for you, Linda.
Thank you, Scott, for all your hard work.
Sure.
Thank you. Okay, and Tom?
Yes, on the agriculture stationary internal combustion engines used for pumping water. Still disappointed that we're not getting an answer of how many of those are there in the 7-mile radius. we're just getting some numbers on total emissions from both portable and stationary engines. But we want to know how many are there, because a lot of money's been allocated for switching those engines to electricity, and we want to know how many are out there. So the question is still open. You don't need to respond to that right now, but that's an ongoing request. On the JP Oil facilities, we're happy to see you've finally got some information for us that was missing. They are a big source of pollution on the south side of Shafter, obviously. It says that, from what I read, there's 22 stationary engines, internal combustion engines pumping oil in the JP Oil field, and they all burn field gas. Can anybody tell me how field gas differs from the gas that people burn in their homes, the natural gas? Is this field gas quite a bit dirtier, or is it just as clean as what we get into our homes?
You know, this is Ryan, Tom. Without knowing the specific makeup of that particular field, the quality of the gas varies greatly depending on the field. In some cases, the gas that's coming from the field can basically go directly into a pipeline. It has the same higher heating value as the PUC quality gas, and it doesn't have other constituents that would prevent it from being put into the pipeline. We didn't do an analysis of the gas makeup in this case, and so I guess at this point we can't fully answer that question.
Okay, well, the data does show SOx emissions from those engines are quite high, so I'm assuming there's sulfur in the gas that would not be allowed in the natural gas that we burn in our homes. And why are they allowed to burn gas with sulfur at such a high sulfur content? I mean, why is it even allowed?
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Tom, for the questions. It's noted, and we hear how important this issue is about sulfur content.
You heard my last question?
Yes, we did.
Well, is there an answer?
Is this something we can answer now, or we have to look at it?
Well, okay, I want you to look at the content of that field gas, but it looks like there's a lot of sulfur in it. And I'm very confused how an oil company can burn dirty gas, yet nobody else is allowed to burn dirty gas, you know, in terms of the air pollution emissions. Okay, you don't have to answer now. You can check it out. One more thing on, you know, we asked about the internal combustion engines in the CRC oil field, and the response was, well, we talked to them and they said there weren't any. Well, you should have got back to us. We asked the question for a reason. We see these internal combustion engines pumping oil on the north side of Shafter in the CRC oil field. There's 2 of them within a quarter mile of the elementary school, Sequoia, just north on Madera. And there's 2 more a little further to the northwest that we know about. And we're wondering if there are even more of these. And I don't understand the response just saying, well, we asked them and they said there aren't any. That's blatantly not true. Brad Tuck can respond if he wants, but I don't know how you can disrespect us so much. We ask a serious question. We live in Shafter. There's a reason why we ask the question, and you just slough it off saying, oh, there aren't any. Like, that's ridiculous. So you can respond to that too, and then
yeah,
that's all I have right now.
Okay. There's never any disrespect intended by any of our responses. You know, lacking information. I talked with some of our inspectors that have been out in the field. They didn't recall any, and so just relying upon that data. Now, you can be critical of the process. We probably could have done more, should have done more. Granted, so we'll take this opportunity, Tom, to look into it further and to get back to you with any information.
Tom, thank you for bringing this up and emphasizing these are very critically important issues to you and to the community. I see Gustavo is doing a thumb up. And as Ryan said, district will continue to look into this to make sure they have a good answer to you and for the community.
And it looks like Gustavo has a question.
Yes, how's it going? Thank you very much. So yeah, we definitely appreciate that you all got back to us. To be frankly honest, this was on a Friday afternoon, so the residents really haven't had, and including myself, really haven't had a chance to really go through this document and digest it. So I'm hoping that this is not the only time allotted to speak on this. I would definitely appreciate that there is another opportunity for us to actually look at this, read this in detail. I know that the document in Spanish is slightly longer, so we have to, be careful and make sure that the residents are getting the information in a way that they're able to actually understand and to participate in this. So I hope that this is not the only time that we'll be sharing feedback on this.
Thank you, Gustavo, for that. As you correctly mentioned, the letter was just uploaded on Friday, and I know that not a lot of residents had an opportunity to go over the letter or to look at the responses. They're very detailed, and there are a lot of pages. I want to be mindful of time and going with your suggestions, perhaps to table this discussion for the next time when everyone had plenty of time to review the letter in English and in Spanish. Tom, I see your hand. I know you have more questions. I want to still move the committee towards the closure. We're almost at 5 o'clock. Not closure on the topic, but definitely wrapping up the meeting. And Tom, we will revisit this discussion in the future, perhaps at the next meetings. Okay, so very briefly, we have 4 minutes to wrap up. As Jessica mentioned, the Air District will be following up with some comprehensive reminders about, and Jessica, can you remind me, comprehensive reminders about?
Okay, so I was gonna say, actually, if I can take this really quick time, and if everyone's really good at using their raise hand function, I think sorry, I'm like looking at the chat at the same time. I think to Linda's question earlier, we would really like to get going on a lot of these incentives measures. And one of the big ones, I think, to Todd's point, that we can get going on is the school filtration measure. It ranked high, we have the funding, we can spend it soon. So if everyone could use their raise hand function, and we'll still send out an email, but while I have a captive audience who wants to be a part of a subcommittee for this measure, please raise your hand now and we will note it. And I'm quickly noting, maybe someone else can quickly note. And that will help us, and that'll at least get us started, and we'll send out another email requesting. But these are the folks that will really help get in the nitty gritty. Thank you guys. I'm seeing a lot of great requests. Great. And then similarly, the details will go out very soon from us on the rest of the measures. And so we can kind of use that to help prioritize what we talk about at the next meeting, including following up on any of the other admissions inventory data.
And just really quickly, for folks who are on the phone, I know you are not, if you would like to be on the subcommittee, you can go ahead and mute yourself and let us know, because I know some of the phone numbers are not renamed. Anyone on the phone, committee members who would like to be part of subcommittee? Okay, here none. Well, you're always welcome to follow up with the district and let them know, or type in the chat box. Okay, so any other reminders, Jessica, for the committee members? I think we're good.
And I think Gustavo had one more question. I saw it in the chat here.
John,
sorry, you guys.
We do have one minute left.
Sure. Very quickly, I just want to make sure that at the top of the Air District's priority list is also to continue and finalize the discussion on some sort of disbursement for the participants in the 8617 chapter steering committee. And that's, I think we talked about it in the past, but that's primarily for the residents that live in chapter that participate in 8617. So I don't want to make sure, especially now in this time frame that we're in, that that is something that is made possible.
Great, Gustavus, thank you. It's definitely noted. Okay, so our next meeting is gonna be on July 13th. We're planning to have a Zoom meeting again, and we're planning to test Spanish translation even more. Today we've learned a lot, and there's still a learning curve for all of us. Again,
We'll be better, promise.
I hear promises from the air. You know, just a side note, Spanish translation worked in Fresno, so after being meeting number 1, I think we jinxed it.
We just have to work out the bugs. We'll be okay.
Thank you. With that, I would like to end this meeting. Again, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for contributing, listening, learning, asking questions, participating in the discussion. A lot is going on in Shafter, in California, in the world. So we appreciate you being here with us today, us being with you today, and switching your perspectives and focusing on what matters to Shafter. And with that, the meeting is adjourned. You're welcome to leave the meeting at any time. Have a great evening, everyone.
Thank you all. Thanks to all the subcommittee volunteers.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Thanks,
Night.
everybody.
Hannah, will you disconnect us from Facebook?
Yes. Reminding me about the Facebook. I'm gonna stop recording.